baby, a movement. Man, JFK, right here. I wish Ty Dirty was here to see it.
Let's go, let's go.
What it do, YouTube? It's your boy Rome coming at you again with another video. Today we're going to be talking about the Miranda Warning. Now, the Miranda Warning came from a case called Miranda versus the state of Arizona. And it came behind a guy named Ernesto Miranda. And to give you a little background on Ernesto Miranda, he was born in May of 1941, and he died in January 31st, 1976. Now, Ernesto had a troubled childhood. He was in trouble with the police quite early in his life, like grade school. And he had been in jail multiple times. And the case that brought about Miranda versus state of Arizona, he was charged and subsequently convicted of kidnapping, rape, and armed robbery. And the young lady that he kidnapped, raped, and robbed, during the time, it took about 2 years before they could, roughly around 2 years before they actually caught Miranda. And he, during that time, she told her brother about what happened to her, and gave her a description of Miranda and a description of the vehicle that he was in. And during, I guess our brother was just riding around or whatever. I don't really know exactly how he happened to come across Miranda's vehicle, but he saw it. He called the police and told them, hey, you know, the guy who did this to my sister's vehicle, this looked like his vehicle. I think this might be him. They came, they checked it out. They approached Miranda, and he actually went with him with no problem. You know, he went in and they put him in a lineup, and they had the young lady come in, and she actually ID'd him, and then they wanted her to ID him off his voice, a voice recognition. So they put him in a different room and asked him, hey, you know, is this the young lady? And he told him, yeah, that's her. You know, and off of him speaking that, she recognized the voice and also ID'd him on his voice. Now, after they did all that, Miranda asked the officers, how did I do? And they told him, well, you've been ID'd positively. So we're going to be, he confessed, basically, to the crime. He wrote a confession. And it's weird because he wrote his confession. He hand wrote it. They took the confession and put it in a typewriter and typed at the top of the confession letter that he was read his rights and he understood them. If this man wrote out his confession, why would you then take it and put it in a typewriter and type on it? So that just shows you that police have been crooked for a long time, which we already knew that, especially when it comes to black and brown people. But the thing with the case is it encompasses the 5th Amendment, the 6th Amendment, and part of the 14th Amendment. Now, he, like I said, he was convicted of those 3 crimes, but it ended up being overturned. His conviction ended up being overturned because he wasn't read his rights, basically. His rights were violated because they didn't inform him. You know how we are so baptized with CSI and Law and Order that, you know, as soon as the police get them, oh, well, you have the right to remain silent. They're reading them their rights right there on the spot. It doesn't really work that way. They actually want to take you into an interrogation room so that way they can get a audio and a video of you being read your rights. And then you still sign a paper stating that you read your rights and you understood what was being read to you. You know, and they do this to cover their own butts, you know, which is understandable, you know. But back then they weren't really doing it that way. So they didn't read him his rights. So that violated his 5th Amendment because 5th Amendment, basically, I don't have to talk if I don't want to. I have the right to remain silent. In the 6th Amendment, you have the right to not self-incriminate yourself. You know, so to not incriminate yourself. So it was violating on that. And then also it denied him the right to taught to attain counsel. They didn't tell him, hey, you have the right to an attorney. If you can afford one will be provided for you at no cost. You know, so those things were denied him. Even though this man had been through the system multiple times, he knew what was supposed to happen. They didn't tell him that you have the right to an attorney. If you can't afford one will be appointed to you. So even though he's been through the system numerous times, he knows what's supposed to happen. But just because he knows doesn't mean that they're not supposed to do it. So they violated his rights by not advising him of his rights. So even though they attained a confession, it was still an illegal confession. It shouldn't have been admissible in court. So his attorneys filed an appeal on the grounds that he wasn't basically read his rights. And they won a new trial, and the new trial was the confession was not admissible. But in the end, he was still convicted of the crimes. I mean, dead to rights, he was still guilty. But, you know, they still, like I said, convicted him, and he was sentenced to 20 to 30 years. Now, he was paroled in 1972, and during that time, he was carrying around Miranda Warning cards. And he was actually autographing them, charging people $1.50 to autograph the Miranda Warning cards. And he, right during the time where he was killed, he was in a bar, and they don't really know all the details. It's kind of murky, but a fight broke out in the bar, and he was stabbed, and he died from his injuries, and that was in 1976. And since then, you know, Miranda rights that's basically, it took on his name. That's why he was carrying the cards around, you know, because if before they actually put his name to it, it was just, you know, read him his rights, you know. But now, you know, they call it a Miranda Warning, or, you know, Miranda rights, and that is basically how we get Miranda warnings. His name is attached to it. He was a troubled guy, you know, but it doesn't matter how troubled you are, you still have to be advised of your rights. So that's how a lot of people get off with cases, because if they're not advised of their rights, then anything that you tell the police, if you haven't been Mirandized, even if it leads to weapons, if it leads to drugs, it's still illegally attained, and you could potentially be released on it and beat it. And you may not beat it and actually walk free, but I mean, you can be granted another case, like is in the case of Ernesto Miranda. He still was subsequently convicted again, but his confession wasn't admissible in court. So that's just another video just to get you guys hipped on how these laws came about, or how they got their name, you know, just to keep you guys educated. Peace.
In the wind, all the divas are white, jumping in the wind, senoritas are rock, jumping in the wind, middle of the map, nice, summer on smash, middle of the map, guys.